Hello everyone and welcome back. We're now starting part 2 of the tutorial for the Republic DLC for Crusader Kings 2. So we've been over all the basics in part 1. If you're only just joining me, you might want to go back and have a quick look at that. We discussed the basic gameplay concepts and the new UI here, the Republic tab, and basic, just general, as I say, gameplay concepts and ideas that are unique to the Republic and how you need to approach the game and the differences between this and a game of vanilla. So first of all, let's sort out an ambition. There's nothing really new in the ambition scores. An intrigue is quite useful. Strangely enough, not so much to the Doge, but or the Doge or even the Grand Mayor in this case. That's one issue with Gotland, is that the leader is referred to as the Grand Mayor rather than as the Doge. But it's the same basic thing. So I'm going to go with improved stewardship because there's a good chance I'll be able to pick it up, but improved intrigue will be useful a bit further down the line. Title loss on succession, this is obviously quite important, but basically this is just telling me that I'm not the expected successor here. Now, I'm not too worried about maintaining control of the Republic of Gotland at the moment because this guy is 46, I'm 19, he's quite likely to die before I am, provided that I can play carefully and ensure I avoid any assassination attempts. And that's true of most of these patricians. They're much older than I am, so in theory they can all die off. My heir will then be the oldest, my heir will then take it. But of course that's all assuming that I can survive that long. So to that end, let's assign the Chancellors. First of all, let's improve diplomatic relations to avoid any potential issues there. We'll research military tech, or we can train troops. Those are the main ones we're looking at here. Researching military tech, not quite so useful here with the Republic, to be honest, because ultimately you're not relying on your own armies. When you're waging war, if you've got trade posts in cities, you can raise some decent levies, but at the end of the day you're probably going to be relying on mercenaries as the backbone of your army. Nevertheless, for now we'll go with that. We'll go with research military tech. The steward, researching economy tech, very useful in the long term, very, very useful in the long term, but collecting taxes quite useful in the short term to try and get trade posts up. And I'm going to go with collect taxes, and I'll explain why in just a moment. Spymaster, scheme, without a doubt scheme. We need to make sure this character survives because I'm banking on him surviving in order to be able to be able to maintain control of the Republic. So it's important he doesn't fall prey to plots. That means the Spymaster is sent to scheme. Those of you who've watched the basic videos will of course know that scheming is defensive spying. Finally, the Court Chaplain. Now, this is useful because it brings us to our first problem with playing as Gotland, and that is we are a Catholic ruler. On the other hand, most of the rulers around here tend to be Norse or pagan. This lot aren't, but all down here along the east coast, it's all pagans. But yeah, if you want to check the religion of a ruler, all you need to do is go to the character sheet. You can see here what their religion is, and what their actual religion isn't really all that important. If it's different to yours, it's going to be a problem. You're going to get opinion modifiers. You see, infidel -30 there. Where it does come in is if you choose to declare a holy war. So, for example, you always have the holy war casus belli for people of a different religion than you. Waging war with a casus belli the holy war casus belli tends to bring other people of the same religion into the war on the aid of the defender. So if I press this, I'm not only going to have to defeat this little territory here, but pretty much any remover pagans nearby are going to join in, because the whole reason for the war is to try and basically kick the nuts of their religion. On the other hand, if I was just going for another sort of casus belli, say I had a legitimate strong claim or I fabricated a claim, that wouldn't be an issue. I would just be fighting them. So a lot of people complain about pagan rulers suddenly springing up with thousands of troops at once. that's usually why. It's usually because all their neighbours have jumped in at once because of the Holy War Casus Belli. So we shouldn't have too much trouble with Denmark, who's also Catholic, and Sweden, also currently Catholic, but there's usually a civil war brewing in Sweden at this point of the game, so that could swing either way. So what we do with the court chaplain is quite important, because convert populace becomes very useful in this sort of playthrough. Converting populace means if you're going to conquer a place, you can minimise the problems of the recently conquered penalty. Again, if you're not familiar with it, go and see my basic vanilla playthrough videos. Those will tell you all about that. But the long and short of it is that recently conquered provinces are useless. If you've recently conquered a province that's a different religion to your own, that goes doubly so. Research cultural tech and improve religious relations remain the same, and religious relations with the current pope are not too bad. However, I do believe that I currently have, my marshal is Norse pagan, and I think quite a few of my vassals are as well. Not on the council, not on the council. It is usually, I could have sworn there was more Norse pagans than that. But, oh yeah, there we go, so there's two. There's, or is this the same guy? Yes, he's my marshal. And this patrician is as well. No, he wasn't. But either way, they tend to infiltrate your court with relative ease. So again, that's my marshal. If you hover over him, you can see. So it's often very advisable, if you will, to use the convert populace. So I'm going to use that there for now. At the very least, I'd like my marshal on my side. You can also check religions with the Religions Overlay tab here. This will show you the official religion of a county. Now, it does not show you the religion of every individual within the county. So for example, here in Sodermanland, there may very well be vassals and courtiers who are infidels. Yep, you see this guy here is Norse pagan, even though the realm itself is all Catholic. You see here, this is a mix between, this is primarily Norse pagan, but the fact that it's checkered means that the populace is a mix. So that's a very useful overlay when you're considering where to invade. You can see here that all of these are Suomenusko, Tengri here, Orthodox over here, Remuva over here, as we've seen. So be very, very careful with that. And of course we have Shias and Sunnis over here, and Mere Fascite here, over in this area. So religion, potential issue over here, but as long as you manage it, not too serious. The next thing we need to consider now that we've got the assigned accounts, now that we've assigned the council, is how are we going to expand? Now, we're going to expand relatively unopposed up through the Gulf of Bothnia here and into the Gulf of Bothnia here, but then we hit a dead end. We've got nowhere else to expand. We've got these territories, we've got quite a few territories here, but if we secure this area, we've got nowhere else to go. Now, we could try and compete with the other houses in this area, but as I've said, that means that we need to get more trade posts bordering each of these areas than they have. And that's not easy. It also means that we're not getting total control of the areas, which means we're not getting the maximum income, which in turn inhibits the amount of trade posts we can put down. So you're essentially sacrificing long-term gain simply to try and keep your opponents down. Now, that doesn't mean it's not a valid tactic, because it is a valid tactic. I mean, if they can't compete against you, if they can't get the money together, then, you know, they can't get off the ground, and you can just steamroller over here and break out of the Scandinavian areas and just advance down through what is modern Germany, modern France, and the east coast of Britain. Or, what you can do is try and expand up this way and try and keep this lot down long enough that you can then break out here and form a second trade zone. Now, in a perfect world, we'd have the trade zone all the way around here, and we'd have all of it as one big trade zone. Because as I've said before, bigger trade zones are better. But if we're going to go up this way, we might just need to settle for a smaller secondary trade zone once we've got that area secured. So that's what I think we're going to do. It's what I've done in previous playthroughs, and to be honest, it's actually worked pretty well. You've got to keep an eye on these families, and you've got to hamstring them at every moment that you can, but it does work. You've just got to settle for the fact that you've got a second trade zone forming here. So, without further ado, let's check the laws and set them to something a little bit more useful. Feudal taxation small would be nice because it means that we can bleed money off the rest of these patricians, and they can essentially pay for our trade posts, which will then further pay for their demise. They're essentially paying for the privilege of us screwing them up the backside. So, small feudal taxation, very useful. On the other hand, in the Republic, very difficult to pass. So if you check this little button here, you can see a list of open opponents. You can see who has how many votes. So that gives you an idea of who you should be trying to influence. But we'll let the game run for a month or two before we actually action that, just so that people can get themselves sorted. Regular succession, by the way, within your own family, within your own dynasty, is dynastic seniority. So the oldest member of the dynasty becomes the leader of the dynasty. They are also, the second oldest member is also your heir with regards to the elections. You can't change it. As you can see here, the gender laws and succession laws don't change. The oldest male is the leader. If the oldest male is also the Doge or Grand Mayor of the Republic, then the second eldest member is their heir when they die. Pretty straightforward stuff. So, let's play her in for a bit. Ah yes, Prince Eric the Heathen. This is the guy who starts that bloody civil war. So keep an eye on the factions here because he tends to get involved quite quickly. We'll approve this limited crown authority for now because it will mean that the currently Catholic king has a much better chance of fighting off this faction. Unfortunately, I'm used to there being a loyalist faction, and that's from the Prince and Thane mod, which I've currently been playing with, but sadly that's not an option here. So, okay, gain a bit of piety, always useful. So we want to keep an eye on that civil war, because really we don't want this guy to win it, because he's Norse, which means that our new liege lord, because I would like to remind you that our current liege is this guy. Oh, he's died. What we got here? Approve. No, that's the wrong one. This is the current one, the current incumbent. Yeah, he's still Catholic, but essentially, we want to make sure that our liege is the same religion as us. Otherwise, it tends to lead to problems. So he actually died of pneumonia. I thought the Scandinavians were immune to that sort of thing. So if you check our ingoings and outgoings, you can see that our duties to the liege do have something going on here. Lords of Sweden have approved limited crown authority. Sadly, I'm languishing with 9 votes here, so I need to know who to bribe. So Patrician Goldsmeld has 6 votes. He's at -5. Patrician Henjum and Guildhusen and Straben have 6 votes. And they like me at 5. So these guys are going to be the best options to try and bribe. So we can try sending some gifts around, splashing a little bit of money, and seeing if they're willing to take the bait, as it were. If I can get them on side, I should hopefully be able to try and pass this law. So you've got to spend a little bit of money to make a little bit of money. So I get 8 votes. The only other person is Ingevroma, who has 1 vote. So these guys aren't up for it, but it's not surprising given the fact they get to vote on whether or not they themselves get taxed. So you've got to get their appreciation of you pretty high, which is one of the reasons why I put my Chancellor to improve diplomatic relations, because it should help get that through. And in the meantime, we need to consider where we're going to put our first trade post. Now, Ireland here could be quite a useful spot. It only costs 178. Suomi would be very useful, as it has a city in it, whereas this does not. So we could then further claim that city down the road. But it costs 226. In both cases, it will give me another trade post on the Sea of Ireland, making it a little bit more difficult for other families to try and take that post away from me. Okay, so we have that civil war. So you can see here we've got the reds popping up, and if we check here we have the Swedish Holy War for Courland. That's not the one we're interested in, but it looks like an invasion was declared here. The one we're interested in here is Jarl Eric the Heathen's War for Sweden. We really don't want him to win that, because he is Norse and we are Catholic, and if he wins it means we have a Norse liege who will not like us very much because of these weird religious ideas that we have. So it might very well be worth trying to muster in and get some troops in there. On the other hand, when we can muster just over 400 troops, we're not going to be hugely useful, but we might be useful enough. So we'll merge these into one big army. We'll appoint our very best fighters, including myself. That should net me a little bit of prestige. And then we need to raise the fleet levies, which I always hate doing because these buggers take an absolute ton of money to support. Incidentally, each galley supports 100 troops. So if you have, you take the number of troops you have, multiply it by, well, divide it by 100, that's how many galleys you need. I would also strongly recommend disbanding these as soon as you're done with them, because they are a huge drain on your resources. Now, we can either control this army manually, or we can use this button here to attach it to follow the prince's army and just basically let him use them as his own troops. I'm going to do that because I prefer to avoid micromanagement wherever possible. Paradox games are not about the micro. I'm sure you figured that out by now. So you can see here, those armies are going to hopefully be large enough to actually make a considerable difference now that I've got some troops in there supporting them. 1,600, 1,600, they outnumber the enemy, but it looks like they're content to lay siege here for now. Okay, so there's not much I can do really there. I'm just going to let that war play out and hope that I can keep my own fellow Catholic in power. In the meantime, I'm just going to let the money roll in, and then I'm going to construct my first trade post, and I'm probably going to construct it in Ireland, purely because I'm going to be able to get that one much sooner, and getting another trade post up is going to increase my income, which is going to make getting more easier. A trade post in Ireland is probably not going to be, at the moment, any better than a trade post in Suomi, at least until I can seize that city in Suomi. So I'll go for Ireland, and then hopefully we can expand up into the Gulf of Bothnia up here. That's the long-term plan. So you can see here my heir has just come of legal age. And this brings me to another little point about this DLC pack. Trying to marry into nobility is a pain in the arse. Mainly because you have this bride price. Bride price is basically, because you are a filthy little commoner, essentially, you have to pay for the privilege of marrying nobles. And that's why the Seas County casus belli is so important. Ultimately, marrying nobles, probably not going to happen all that much. So what you really need to do is just marry your heirs off to anyone within your own republic. Now, as the game develops, they may get titles themselves. So for example, if someone is using the casus belli to claim a county, they might get that title. Then marriage within your own republic becomes a lot more strategic. But in the early game, you're basically just looking at trying to ensure that your heirs are married so they can fire out kids. So let's arrange a marriage here. We'll just marry him off to this courtier for now. Let's just check her stats. Whew, bloody hell. Not very good stewardship. That is not a good thing for a patrician character, or even a doge character, or a grand mayor character. Marshal, that high would be incredible in a regular game, but as it stands, her intrigue score is alright, her diplomacy score is passable, her learning score though and her stewardship score are just too low. So unfortunately we might want to try inviting someone to court. So we might want to present a debutante here, and we'll see if that gives us slightly better options to marry this heir off. So who's this courtier? Okay, 20 diplomacy, 7 martial, 3 stewardship, 7 intrigue and 5. Yep, that's a much better balance. The stewardship is still really low, but that's good enough. We'll see here that the civil war continues, the sieges continue, and hopefully in time, with a little bit of aid from us, the civil war will resolve in our favour. But for now, we're just trying to save up enough money. 209 gold. How much does it cost for Suomi? 226 gold. We might go straight for Suomi in this case. And this is the problem when you're on the wrong side of a civil war. People don't like you all that much. So the siege in this territory has pretty much resolved. If we switch to the independent realms over here, you can see it's fully checkered. So now it looks like the army is advancing to try and tackle the army of the usurper here. And it looks like they've got a good advantage of numbers. They may very well succeed. They probably will succeed. Surprised they held out as long as they did, to be honest. So they've been hit hard. That helps with that war score. So it looks like he's going to move in, try and finish them off. And the nice thing about this is because our army is assisting, we get a little bit of prestige and a little bit of piety as well. So now hopefully... Oh god, you bloody idiot. He's diverting the entire army to go and fight this bloody holy war, instead of trying to put down the rebellion in his own land. Alright, I'm detaching my own forces to see if there's somewhere where I might just possibly... Ah, there we go. Wasn't an idiot after all. Peace has been made, so I'm not going to join in this holy war. I'm disbanding my levies because I don't want to have to deal with levies raised too long penalties. So that's now sorted. My money is now going straight back into filling my coffers, with the exception of my tithes obviously and some family dues. Family dues, you will remember, are for adult male family members in your court. In this case it looks like it's my father and my heir. So that's wonderful, but obviously they do serve to be useful a bit further down the line. Aaron subject Josie Goldtup has resorted to the Catholic faith. Okay, that wasn't my marshal, it was someone else, but like I say, it just helps to try and stamp out the number of pagans that you have in your court at the start of this game. So let's just see any known plots, threats, prisoners, nothing, nothing, nothing. Public, nothing. Ah, Goldsmeld has got their first trade post, so we need to fight to catch up a bit there. So this has now been reduced down to 178 again, whereas this remains at 226. So we'll stay there. We could also, in theory, go for somewhere a little bit closer to home. However, the costs are still quite high. Even though I fought with this bastard side by side to defend his crown, he's not willing to look kindly on me for it. And there's another faction started. I would try and rub this person out, but unfortunately my intrigue score is so bloody low that it's unlikely to succeed. So I don't really want to take the chance right now. Either way, Sweden seems to be intent on expanding his realm. More power to him. Henjum Guildsmen, they each have 1 sea territory each. So, oh, that was the bloody courtier that I brought in. God damn it! I demand a refund. My debutante died within a couple of years.
Well, I better replace it then.
All right, let's pay a little bit more and see if we can get this heir married off again. And hopefully this time produce some actual bloody children. So 13 diplomacy, Civil Marshal, 3 stewardship, 0 intrigue, but 13 learning. No, useless. Absolutely useless. So we're getting off to a really bad start here because we're having to spend so much money just to make sure that the heir has a decent bride. Astrid, still shit, but good enough. Okay. So this is not a good start. Like I say, this game is all about money. We need money. We need money to get trade posts in order to get more money. So having to sink, what, I think we've sunk about 33 gold already. So we could have our first trade post up by now. In fact, it may have been wiser just to have left the bloody heir unmarried. But such risks can sometimes pay off, but obviously being risks, they don't always pay off. So we've got some rebels up here. Nothing for me personally to worry about. The liege lord can put them down himself once he's done playing Crusader over here. Right now my main concern is just getting enough money together to be able to build that bloody trade post on Ireland here. If I can get that, I'll be happy. The other thing we can consider is possibly upgrading this trade post here, but for now, trying to expand the number of trade posts that we have is a bit more important, as provided that they're linking into the same trade zone, you'll get more out of building extra trade posts than you will out of upgrading your existing ones. Begging your pardon, a little bit of gas. Okay, so I've gained 1 stewardship, I've fulfilled that ambition, that's excellent. I'll now set myself to improve intrigue, although I very much doubt I will ever fulfill that ambition because my intrigue is so bleeding low. Okay, so we have another one who's converted, and this one is my marshal. So I think that he has now done the job. So what I'm going to do is send him to convert populace. I'll have him research cultural tech for a little while. Actually, that's something we should do, set our technology. Especially economic advances, I'm going to set it on trade practices, because trade practices come from cities. Cities are our primary holdings. Normally primary holdings for the nobility would be castles, so you'd leave it on farming, but here trade practices are far more useful. And with culture advances, I'm going to go with religious flexibility, because obviously we have to deal with different cultures. So your technology focus, again, if you're thinking too much about your technology, you're not playing the game right. It's not about micromanaging those little details. You just want to give it, it might give you an advantage over several decades. So do consider your technology and do set the focuses, but don't fret over it. It's not worth really panicking over and agonizing over the decisions. Just set it to whatever looks about right, and odds are you'll be okay. If you do want to know a little bit more about it, there are better guides online. Let's see, can we do anything more with the laws at the moment? We're still trying to get that small feudal tax through. So, can we do anything with these guys to try and... we can award them honorary titles. I think 50 is the threshold where they normally start to support. But yeah, there we go. So hopefully, yep, there we go. So small feudal tax law has been applied. You can see we get quite a bit more money coming in now. So city tax 12.10 and church tax 3.42. So we've managed to get a nice little extra increase here, but more importantly than that, the families beneath us have now lost some of their income, meaning it's going to be harder for them to build new trade posts and harder for them to expand. That's the thing to remember with Crusader Kings 2 is your actions affect every other character as if they were a player character. Not entirely true, that statement is a little bit of a simplification, but it illustrates the point. So we're nearly got enough money for the trade post here in Ireland, so we can keep up with Guldsmed here, and hopefully that taxation will help to keep Guldsmed down. The man is always trying to keep the Guldsmed down. So build, bingo, job's a good one. Takes a little bit of time to finish, but that gives us our first foreign trade port. And once it's constructed, it will be connected to the capital, as it will be part of a sea route that is connected directly to the capital. And it will be part of a slightly larger trade zone, meaning that the value of this trade post here is going to go up a little bit. You can see trade zone size, where are we? Trade zone bonus plus 16.5. That should increase slightly once this one's finished. So the question is, where has Guldsmed built that second one? So they have Holland there, and Electric, that's that one there. So they're consolidating the sea zone that they already control. So I now can't seize that from them really, unless I seize the trade post. I could get Smarland. You can see Smarland's port is there, but they'd still have one better than me. Seizing Skane wouldn't do it because their port there borders the Sound. So I'd need to poach trade posts off them, and ironically enough it is harder to do that as the Doge. You'll remember in part 1 I mentioned that there are advantages to not being the Doge, or the Grand Mayor in this case, and one of those is that you can plot to seize trade posts. You just go to the intrigue screen, choose a plot, choose an appropriate trade post. You do need to have a trade post bordering the trade post that you want to seize in order to be able to do that, and there are a few other conditions. But the main condition is that you are not te Doge. So this should be done August 1071, so a bit later this year. So another holy war from the King of Sweden. We have choices here. Cruel or kind? I really need the intrigue, so I'll go with cruel for now. Not exactly great, but I could have done a lot worse. Not by much, in fact, so a lot worse is being generous. Okay, my wife is pregnant. This is good. Means I can fire out more kids to manage my business empire in the future. Oh, you know, and of course the joy of marriage and raising, you know, screaming loin spawn and all that. Yeah, I'm not a natural parent. So this little war wages on. We could try getting involved, get a little bit of prestige and piety out of it, but, you know, really can't be asked. I mean, money from the sieges would be quite nice, but I'm not entirely convinced that my military is really large enough to lay siege to anything bigger than a cardboard box. And, you know, even then they'd probably run screaming if its owner came out of it, so... yeah, I'll leave that one alone for now. But that's something that you need to get used to with the Republic. Your military is a resource more than anything else, And even more so with the nobility, you'd normally be focusing on your marriages and engineering titles, and your military is just another means. With the Republic, the military really is just a secondary resource. But you'll see the trade post has gone up in Ireland here. I believe that the trade post here in Gotland initially had an extra 16.5 on it for the trade zone bonus. You'll see it's now gone up to 17.9. So not only has the existence of this trade post helped, but it has also, through its creation, helped improve this existing trade post. And if I build one in, say, Upland here, it will again, in its mere existence, will be nice, but it will also improve the effectiveness of the existing trade posts as well within that trade zone. So you see why it snowballs. You go to here, you can see that my income's gone up a little bit, my trade income is now a little bit higher, slightly offset by the family dues, but what the hey. So I'm going to draw this episode to a close here. We've illustrated where we've positioned our first trade post and why we've positioned it there. We've gone over the issues with religion in this territory and why it's important to keep an eye on who's Catholic and who isn't. So I think this guy's now been installed. But if we check the religion tab, you can see who's Catholic and who isn't. And obviously we've gone over why it's dangerous to use that Holy War Casus Belli and why waging war as a republic is typically not all that advisable. So we've got our first trade post up, we've got confirmed control of the Sea of Ireland, we've managed to institute feudal taxation. That means that provided we can hold on to the Grand Mayorship of Gotland, it will help to cripple the other opposing families, whilst at the same time feeding our own empire. So, despite having to waste a little bit of money at the start in order to get a decent bride for my heir, we have managed to make some progress. So next week we'll continue this playthrough and hopefully we'll be able to make some real progress. But for now, I'm Uvis T, signing off.